Ready.
All right, I'll let you know when to start.
Yeah, definitely. I will. Lots of messages being left.
Okay, go ahead and start.
Hello. Hi. This is good evening and welcome to tonight's National Education Association in New Mexico Town Hall. We're featuring NEA New Mexico President Betty Patterson and our Executive Director Charles Boyer. We're going to be talking about this election and why it is so important that we and our families and friends make it to the polls this Tuesday, November 4th, if not earlier. After some introduction remarks, we will invite you to ask a question. To ask a question, all you'll need to do is press 0 on your telephone keypad, and you'll be connected directly with one of our volunteer operators. Again, to ask a question, press 0 on your keypad, and it'll connect you to one of our operators. So let's begin. First, we're going to hear from NEA New Mexico President Betty Patterson. Betty?
Welcome. We all know that elections have consequences, and this is the time to voice your concerns in the voting booth. So let's have those questions.
Okay, and our second speaker tonight, as I said earlier, is NEA New Mexico Executive Director Charles Boyer. Charles, to you.
As Betty just said, elections have consequences, and we probably haven't heard an election or had an election in the last 20 years that's more consequential than this one for school employees and children in New Mexico. We have a gubernatorial election, obviously, and that's very, very important to us. We believe that the current governor's education policies need to be changed, but it's also very important that NEA recommended candidates all the way down the ballot receive your support. For instance, in the state treasurer's race, the state treasurer has been our swing vote on the Educational Retirement Board. If we lose that swing vote, we lose the support of that board in maintaining your retirement benefits. Secretary of State is the person who determines whether or not we have voter suppression in New Mexico or not. We believe that all citizens have a right to vote, and we believe that our endorsed candidate, Maggie Toulouse Oliver, will allow that to happen. So we hope you'll support our candidates all the way down the ballot, not just our candidate for governor, because the consequences in almost every one of those races are vital for school employees in New Mexico this year.
Thank you, Charles. So I want to remind everyone that if you have a question, you can press 0 on your phone and you'll be connected to one of our volunteer screeners. But also, before we go on, because we've been joined by so many people, we're now at over 900 educators on the line right now, which is just fantastic. So I want to just really briefly reintroduce the event in the sense of we have Betty Patterson, NEA New Mexico President, and Charles Boyer, our Executive Director, who you just heard from. And we're going to have a few questions that we have for you, but also we're taking your questions. So, again, just hit 0 on your pad to ask your question. So I'm going to start off with, since we're waiting for some questions to come in, I'm going to start off with one of our questions. So this question is about the information that we at NEA New Mexico have provided to you about the election, and it'll help us with our future efforts. So on your keyboard, if you can press 1 if we gave you enough information about the recommended candidates and why we support them. Press 2 if we gave you too little information. Press 3 if we're pouring on too much information. And press 4 if you've heard nothing from us. So again, 1 if we gave you enough, just the right amount. 2 if we gave you too little. 3 if we gave you too much. And 4 if you've heard nothing from us. So while those your responses are being tallied, do we have any live questions from anybody on the phone? Now we're up to over 1,000 educators on the phone. Actually, yep, right about 1,000.
We have an email question,
Charles. We have an email question. What is the? Okay. The email question is the question about teacher evaluation, and what difference is this election going to make in that?
Well, this is Charles. I'm sure some of you know that NEA New Mexico has filed a lawsuit because we believe the current teacher evaluation system has been illegally imposed on teachers in New Mexico. But the bottom line is the person who is in charge of deciding who the Secretary of Education is the governor. And so if we replace the governor, the Secretary of Education will be replaced. So the best way to affect teacher evaluation is by voting for NEA recommended candidates this year. Obviously, the state legislature is the place where we believe teacher evaluation ought to be decided, and having education-friendly legislators there will be vitally important. So while we'll pursue through the courts what we can't get done by getting the governor and the Secretary of Education to change their minds, the best way to change teacher evaluation for the better in New Mexico is to vote for NEA New Mexico recommended candidates all across the board. Betty, any?
I think you covered it, and our NEA candidate also said that he would make sure that we have a truly good Secretary of Education and one who's been in the classroom. So that's what we all want.
Okay, thank you, Betty and Charles. So I have another email question, actually, and the question is about that NEA New Mexico has been talking a lot about the House of Representative candidates and talking a lot about it. So why is that? Why the emphasis on the House?
Well, that's a very important question. The pro-education majority in our House of Representatives is very slim right now. And if we lose even one of those pro-education representatives, we're going to be at a critical spot in trying to get education legislation through the House of Representatives. Every time the legislature meets, everything we've fought for the last 128 years is on the line. Teacher due process is on the line anytime the legislature meets. Teacher salaries are on the line. Our licensure system is on the line. Our evaluation system, our retirement system, our insurance system, our retiree health care system, it's all there for any legislature to make changes to. We believe those changes ought to be positive changes that support school employees and the work they do and protect our children. So the House of Representatives is absolutely the goalkeeper to make sure good things happen and bad things don't. And if we lose the pro-education majority in the House of Representatives by losing even one vote that we have now, everything we've worked for the last 128 years could go down the drain in one legislative session.
Great, Charles. Betty, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's good, but we do have a lot of friends out there, and we need to make sure that we're calling for them, walking for them, and voting for them. So let's be sure that we're doing that in our districts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Betty. And to let the listeners know, we had on the question earlier about our materials that we sent and the information about who we recommend to vote for, 57% of you say that we gave you just about enough information. 37% said too little, and 6% said too much. So that's interesting. We do have a caller on the line, and it's Barbara from Las Cruces. Barbara, are you on, Barbara?
Okay, yes. When I look on Facebook, there's postings by Susana Martinez, and I noticed that overwhelmingly all of the post responses are negative. And yet when I look at the polls say, oh, she's a sure-in, there's no problem. Are the polls accurate, or are the polls being manipulated? Because what I'm seeing is a lot of people that don't like her.
Well, here, Barbara's one thing for sure. The polls are accurate if we don't vote. If our folks don't turn out and vote, then the model the pollsters are using will be the model that turns out on Election Day. But if we turn out the folks who you've seen posting on Facebook and other places in social media, then the turnout model the pollsters are using won't be the correct one on Election Day. And that's really the bottom line, is who do we turn out to vote? Not how do voters feel right now, not how does everyone in New Mexico feel. If the pollsters are accurate, they could or might not be. Bottom line is we've got to turn out those folks who are doing the postings you've seen. So the answer is we won't know that answer until Election Day, but we know it now if our folks don't turn out and vote. Everybody on this call has the opportunity to vote right now. Well, not right now, but tomorrow, sometime before 8 o'clock tomorrow night at an early vote polling place. So the polls are based on a turnout model, we've got to change that turnout model and make the turnout model one that says folks who care about public education are the ones who turn out to vote.
Okay, I have one other email question, which is about, but before I get to that, I want to remind people to press 0 to ask your questions. So this is an opportunity to be on the line and ask questions of Betty and Charles and the hundreds of listeners too. So press 0 to ask your question. But the email question that just came in was about the Constitutional Amendment 1 that said the language on it was to prevent or to limit school boards elections from not being on with partisan elections, and the reader or the writer is confused about that. Charles?
Well, the writer has a right to be confused because the legislative debate that led to this constitutional amendment was very confusing. We know there are historical reasons why school elections are held separately from partisan elections. Whatever those reasons are, we believe that there's still good reason to hold school elections separately from partisan elections. We think partisan politics permeates public schools enough without subjecting our public school elections to partisan elections. So essentially this constitutional amendment does nothing. Right now, school elections are set to be held the second Tuesday in February of odd-numbered years. If this constitutional amendment passes, they could still be held then, because all this amendment says is they cannot be held at the same time as partisan elections. So the truth is we haven't taken a position on the amendment, but it means very little. It forbids something from happening that already is forbidden from happening.
Great. Thank you, Charles. Okay, we're going to go to our second poll questions for you, the listening audience, our members out there, which is, why is it most important for you to vote in this election? So we want to get us a better feel for your the issues that matter most to you. So press 1 if it's school funding, an overall increase in school funding. Press 2 if it's because class sizes are too large or your workload is just too big. So the workload question, that would apply to everybody in the schools, not just teachers who have classes. And press 3 if it's about the evaluation process, the current teacher evaluation process. Now, if you're concerned about all 3 of those issues, press 4. So again, 1, school funding. 2, class sizes or workload is just too big. 3, if it's the evaluation process, or 4, if it's all 4. Okay, so while we're waiting for your responses to come in on that, we have Nate in San Juan County. And, we have Nate in San Juan County. And, Nate, are you on?
I'm here.
Great. What's your question?
Well, my name is Nathan Thompson. I'm actually a candidate for state legislature, and I wanted to say thanks I'm an NEA member, and I wanted to say thanks for inviting me to local meetings to speak. My question is that I haven't seen any public endorsement of any of the legislative candidates in our county, and I'm wondering if you could maybe shed some light on why that is. I would love to see endorse Gordon Glass in particular.
Well, one issue is that candidates have to participate in our recommendation process, and so that's the first issue. And I'm looking at our endorsement list because I'm quite frankly not familiar with all of them. He is recommended by us in House District 1. I'm looking at it now. So Gordon Glass is publicly recommended and endorsed NEA candidate in House District 1. Whether the media covers our recommendations or not, it's a different story in San Juan County. You know, it's a pretty conservative media up there, and we certainly have released our recommendations to the media. And whether they cover them or not is frankly up to them. He's certainly on our website and in our publications. We just sent a voter guide out to all of our members, which I hope you received. And it shows him, quite frankly, as being in District 1 as our first endorsed candidate for the House of Representatives.
Okay, now we have Kevin from Santa Fe. Kevin?
Hey, yeah, I already voted, but I have some friends who haven't, and I've been trying to get them to vote, and I need, is there anywhere I can go online to help them vote, or any information you guys have?
Certainly, there's places where you can go online to help them vote. If you go to our website, for instance, if you're a member and you've registered, and you go to our advocacy page, it'll take you to a link that will give you a link to the Secretary of State's site that tells you where early voting sites are and how folks can find them. So you can go to our education advocacy page and to our political advocacy page at the bottom, and that'll take you there. You can also go to the Secretary of State's page. It's sos.state.nm.us.gov, and you can also find where early vote sites are there. And you can go to Tom Udall's page. I've seen it. I know it has early vote sites listed too. So if you go to Tom Udall for Senate, so there are lots of places where folks can find out where to early vote. Early voting is going to continue through next Saturday, and in most places that have to have auxiliary early vote sites, they're supposed to be open Tuesday through Saturday, 8 to 8. And then all counties have the county clerk's office open for early votes during normal business hours. So there are a lot of places to find this information. What I would hope you would tell your friends when you're trying to persuade them to early vote is that this election is very personal about you. And that is, you as a school employee have a lot at stake in this election, and if they're your friend, neighbor, family member, brother, sister, they need to take that into consideration, that a bad turnout on November 4th will lead to some very bad consequences for you and the kids you serve.
Yeah, and Charles, again, in addition to all those sites that you mentioned, are the volunteer operators here that are here tonight could also help you find that out. If you want to press 0, you'll get through to them. If you want to know your voting locations, or for questions to put to us on this telephone town hall tonight. So I just want to share with you the responses back on our questions about the issues that matter to you. 6% said school funding. 13% said class sizes or workloads are too big. 23% specifically said the evaluation, and 53% said all three. So I'm sure we could have listed some other issues as well, but there you have it. That was our responses from all of you out there. Press 0 again if you have any questions. We don't have anybody in the queue right now, so you can get right in. And I'd also like to ask, I guess I'll just go to our final poll question for our audience, which is, well, it has to do with the reality that whatever the outcome of this election, it's still going to be more important than ever for us to have active members, our state's educators, directly educating legislators about the proposals we support. Some people would call it lobbying. I prefer to consider it education. In any case, we may also need to educate them a little bit about the downsides of some of the proposed legislation that we see as harmful. And we know from past experience that legislators really do listen to educators. They really do want to hear what we have to say. So our question is, what can we count on you to do in support of our legislative program during the session? That's the question. So here are the options. Press 1 if you will make at least 2 emails or phone calls during the session. That is to your own legislators. 2 if you want to receive our legislative alerts during the session. And by legislative alerts, we will send out emails saying, hey, this is happening now in Committee X, and we need you to contact Legislator Y. So 2 for legislative alerts. 3 if you might participate in a Saturday rally in Santa Fe or back home sometime during the session. Or 4 if you might do all of these. So I'll go over those again. 1, press 1 if you'll make at least 2 phone calls or emails during the session. 2 if to get on our legislative alert list. 3 if you might participate in a rally in Santa Fe or back home. And 4 if you might do 1 or more, or do 2 or more of these options. So we'll take your answers, and while we're taking your answers, again, here's an update. As of this Saturday, more than 117,000 voters in New Mexico had already cast a ballot during early voting. So again, press 0 if you would like to ask a question or find out your early voting locations.
While we're waiting for questions, I just want to reemphasize that for school employees, this election is personal, as I said before. If you're a teacher, the kind of evaluation system that you're going to be evaluated under is going to be determined by the outcome of this election. If you're a school classified employee, the kind of salary you're going to get is going to be determined by the outcome of this election, the kind of funding we get for public schools. And if you're a parent, the kind of public school education your children receive and the amount of standardized testing they're going to be forced to undergo is going to be determined by the outcome of this election.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Charles. So I also want to make sure, we mentioned, or Charles mentioned early on down ballot candidates. One on a statewide, on your ballot you see lots of options for judges. NEA New Mexico has made a recommendation in the one statewide one for the Court of Appeals. That's Carrie Kernan, for the Public Education Commission by district, we're recommending in District 1 Eleanor Chavez, and District 4 Carol Ann Armbruster, and District 7 Patricia Gibson. And all of those recommendations were made the same way as the other recommendations for State House or statewide candidates. Betty?
We just want people to know what some teachers are doing out there. Some people are helping others go to vote. Other people are sharing our recommended candidate list. Others are just encouraging people to go and vote. We've had some rallies around the state where people are encouraging each other to go and vote. This is so important this time. It is our livelihood. Everything weighs on this voting process, on this election. If we want to be stuck like this for another 4 years, then stay home. If you want a real life, get out and vote.
That's right, Betty. And by the way, our material that we sent you with the recommendations are also available online, and you can click the Education Advocacy tab at the top of our website. It's nea-nm.org.
And I do want to say one more thing. If you can early vote, be sure that you do it. This ballot does take a little bit of time, so you want to make sure that you're really filling in the ballot correctly, that you turn it over and do the other side. And it's so, so important to each one of us that are in the schools right now. So make sure that you go and vote, but try to vote early so that you don't face lines or lengths of time. So we want to see you out there.
That's right, Betty. And, another benefit of voting early is you get your name removed from all the lists of all the people who are making phone calls to your home and mailing stuff to your house. So that's another good reason to vote early. Are there any more questions out there? Remember, dial 0 if you have another question.
And while we're waiting for those questions, Charles, again, I want to mention the legislative races. Most of the issues that have something to do with public schools are decided in the New Mexico legislature. Our collective bargaining act that provides collective bargaining rights to school employees was decided in the legislature. The due process that school employees enjoy in this state was done away with by the legislature in 1986 and restored in 1990 after a long fight. So I want folks to realize that none of these fights are ever won for sure. We have to fight them every legislative session. And if you look at our recommended candidates for the New Mexico House, know that every one of those folks has pledged to be a fighter for public schools and public school employees. Our candidates are vetted through a questionnaire process. They're vetted through a process of elected leaders in this state who gather to make decisions about recommending them. So you can rely on the fact that these recommended candidates have pledged to do the things we need done in education policy in this state. And actually, they're the only group of folks who can do anything about education policy in this state because it all emanates from statutes that this legislature passes.
Thank you for that reminder of our process, Charles. Betty, you want to add anything?
If you happen to be off on voting day, why don't you volunteer? Volunteer to make phone calls, volunteer to pick people up, volunteer to go down and help watch the polls. Whatever you can do, help us out on that day.
Thank you, Betty. That's excellent. We have another call from Nate in San Juan. Nate, are you on?
Hi, I'm just curious. how NEA's endorsed any of the ballot measures this year?
We have not endorsed any of the ballot measures this year. We had endorsed the minimum wage ballot measures, but the county commissions took care of those, and city councils are rather than passed them themselves. So we haven't endorsed any of the other ballot measures.
Okay. All right, and we also have another question from Evelyn in Las Cruces. Evelyn, are you on?
Yes, I am. Thank you for taking my question. I'm wondering, and because I'm a community member, I don't know this myself, do most parents and other community members know what the students are actually studying for a standardized test? And why I'm concerned is that people who make standardized tests right now are Republican in their views, and I know that science and history could be watered down. For example, climate change. We see that the Koch brothers have an exhibit in Washington, D.C. at the Science Museum that debunks climate change. And we also know that some people would like to water down great achievements of Abraham Lincoln or Franklin D. Roosevelt and other people who have done great things.
Yeah, thank you, Evelyn. So your basic question is about, do parents know what kids are studying? All right, thank you.
Well, actually about testing. Who does know? Because none of us have seen the PARCC test. None of us know what's actually on the test or how to prepare your students. So I can tell you right now, parents don't know because teachers don't know. Our students are going to be tested on whatever comes over that computer without any knowledge from us. So right now, we'll see what happens. Hopefully we can get a governor in who says the PARCC test is not a good idea and let's not spend all of that money on this testing. That's what we need.
Great. Thank you, Betty. And we've got one more question. We'll take it from Jerry from Carlsbad. Jerry?
Yes, it's Jerry. Hi, Betty. Hi, Charles. Betty, I heard you mention I heard you mention earlier to people that they could volunteer, like taking other people to the polls and that type of thing. But I don't know that I heard where can people find out how they can volunteer? Where can they get that information about what they can do and where to go to do it?
If they will press 0, we'll have the information for them here. So just press 0, ask the question here, and we can give you that information. And Jerry, if you want to share that information with your groups, just press 0 and ask, and they'll give you that information to share.
Okay. Well, I think we're about through. We're out of calls, and it's just about 30 minutes are up. So we really, really want to thank everybody who participated. There were over 1,000 people online during all or part of the call, actually 1,005 total, which is just wonderful. This is an innovative new way for NEA New Mexico to reach out to people who either can't because you're too busy or whatever issues can't come to our meetings. It's another way to have a different kind of meeting. That's why they're called telephone town halls. So I want to thank you. This is Charles Goodmacher, your government relations person. And Charles and Betty, you want to sign off?
Yes, thank you for being on our call, and hopefully you'll be at the polls. Thank you.
Same thing. Thanks for being on our call. Make sure you vote and make sure you realize and tell your friends and family that this election is personal and it is about you. Thank you very much.